Thank you, Mr. Speaker. What does a Irish Pennsylvania boy have to do with Ike Skelton standing up here and talking? Actually, I have roots in Missouri, in Farmington. My ancestors, Sarah Barton Murphy, started the first Sunday school west of the Mississippi in Missouri, and that was a little story I told Ike. I don't know if he remembers it, but it comes from times that Ike and I traveled together on congressional delegation trips. He had asked me to travel with him to Afghanistan and Iraq at Thanksgiving. We did that twice, giving up time with our families, but traveling out there to be with the soldiers, small Codels as they were, but I think they meant a lot, certainly to the soldiers that were sacrificing so much for our country. And I thought it pretty amazing that here was this gentleman, in the truest sense of the word, being willing to giving up his holidays with family to be over there, and I was certainly pleased and honored to go with him. And we had some interesting times, meeting with General Petraeus, meeting with General McChrystal, seeing the ins and outs of what takes place in a war zone, talking to soldiers in the most candid ways about the stresses that they face. And I know for me, I learned a great deal from them, but also learned a great deal from my friend Congressman Skelton about the ins and outs of what takes place in the military through his chairmanship and ranking membership of what he's learned from the House Armed Services Committee. But there's also things you learn about a person under times of stress. Ike and I have the dubious distinction of being the only two members of Congress ever injured in Iraq. And it happened on a dark night. We were traveling after having met, I believe, with General Casey on a road back to the Baghdad airport, when this up-armored minibus we were traveling in, referred affectionately as an ice cream truck, suddenly hit something, heard a boom, we're up in the air, bounced, rolled over the side, and both of us slid then inside the interior. I was injured a bit. That doesn't matter. Ike had his own symptoms. And a lot of chaos occurred at that moment, and we learned what happens on a military site when there is an injury that occurs, that soldiers swarming around, securing the perimeter, ambulances arriving, trying to take care of both Ike and I at that moment, and incredible dedication and skill these soldiers. We had intended to visit a hospital, but not in a horizontal position. What occurred afterwards, taking us into an ambulance, and we're both in some pain, nothing compared to what our soldiers face. But an interesting little thing happened with one of the staffers at that point, Aaron, reached in, patted my toe, and said, I'll pray for you. The ambulance door closed, and Ike, always a man of good humor, said, what am I, chopped liver? What's wrong here? No one's going to pray for me? He had issues too. We went to a hospital then in Baghdad. Some difficult moments, hearing the cries of a young boy whose room was near ours, who we understand his parents had just been killed, and he was hurt too. Then traveling over to Balad, where our soldiers, who were wounded pretty severely, were all being prepped to take to Landstuhl Hospital in Germany. And to see what takes place as people with some pretty severe injuries were prepared, sometimes on basically a traveling intensive care unit with doctors and nurses around them. And Ike and I, and both our helicopter trip over there, and having those moments where you're lying on this litter on the same helicopter that carries so many of our wounded soldiers, it gives you something to think about. And, of course, then traveling over to Landstuhl on this big C-17 for several hours flight. But now and then I would hear this voice coming from either above me or below me, wherever we happen to be on that particular flight, this voice of Ike saying, well, what do you think about this? Well, we've certainly are learning something here. Always just that little bit of humor and putting that little bit of perspective on it that an otherwise a pretty stressful situation, not only what was happening to us, but being around all these wounded and all these doctors and nurses doing so much. I'm sure Ike has lots of variations on the story he tells, but what is important to hear is that after we came back, he had, of course, made sure that that one staffer who tapped my toe and said, I'll pray for you, understood that he wanted prayers too. And it was sometime after that, I believe, Ike, that what you received was probably a note that a mass was being said for you by the Pope. So you certainly outranked me on what was happening there. But it was his humor, it's his knowledge, it's his incredible class. That a lot of times Americans may hear criticisms of members of Congress. And you may hear the bipartisan or attacks on each other, which is hardly bipartisan. That makes the evening news. When people call each other names, when they insult each other, when they play political games, that's going to make the front page. What you don't hear about is the genuine friendships and respect we have for each other. And let me tell you, Ike, I can't think of anybody in this house that I have more friendship and respect for than what you have taught me. The people of Missouri ought to be real proud that you served them for so long. I know they are. And I'm mighty proud to have had the honor to serve with you, and a man I can always call my friend. God bless you, and thank you. I yield back.